Hello everyone. We finally arrived at the final segment of this course and my topics, which is going to be this is the last segment in the team section, and I really my aim is to try and put together all the aspects so that it falls in one cognitive map for you in one umbrella. So today we're going to look at stress and performance. Of course, a lot the other faculties have also discussed this. I'm also going to try and look into the intricacies of this, right? um, and we You can see that image, this beautiful image right in front of your screen. um, and I think a lot of us would probably recognize this is Arjuna being led by Krishna on the battlefield. Why did I choose this image? I really want you to just hold this image which is in your screen and see what calls out to you, right? Because the metaphor of a chariot and a charioteer is a very apt metaphor for the mind and psychology, especially when we talk of sports psychology. So I want you to notice what's in front of your screen here, right? I also want you to notice how are the horses, right? How's the person guiding the horses or leading the horses? And then you have the person in the chariot, right? And also the reason I'm going to just for a brief second also put you, this is Arjuna. He's known, right? Like for those of us who know the legend of Mahabharata, he's known for his sharp vision, he's known for his focus, right? But this same person, right, same individual, one of our leaders, he's known as a someone with great leadership skill, also faced immense stress on the battlefield before the battle started, right? And what was the triggering factor was when he happened to see the Kauravas or his opponents, who were none other than his own cousins, but also his teachers, his guides, his grandfather, right? And he goes, oh my god, you know do I really need to fight this battle, right? Is this necessary? And he actually puts down his bow and arrow. And that's what the Gita is about, which really is about the right action. But what I really want to stress here is, and look at the pun on stress, is because he showed classic symptoms of stress when he perceived those who were close to him and he had to wage a war against them. And that's where he gets the gnan or the knowledge of, this is a righteous war, right? Only after he settles is he able to go and perform, right? So why did I bring this here? And of course the charioteer image is also about, if you now look at just Krishna, and I mean if you just want to think about it as any other person, how that person holds the reins, how he or she is, also will influence the horses, right? The horses are nothing but our senses. So why is this so important for us? Because in sport, how pressure can build, how stress can build. And what have I been feeding? Have I been feeding the right ingredients to my senses, or am I getting overstimulated or understimulated, right? So that really will depend on me, because then my horses are going to perform in that way. That's going to influence how focused I can be and how I'm going to perform, right? And that is why they always say have an inner coach, inner figure, inner guide, inner Krishna in you, right? So I thought this is a really beautiful image to start with. And I think this shows it all. When you see this person, right, Arjuna, just the way he's, it's they say even the way you hold the arrow, right? It's the right tension. It's too tight, you're not going to be hitting your target. Too loose, you're going to go off track, right? I remember I was working with one of the shooters, and he would be so over focused on his pre-ritual that he was taking too much time, right? Pre-shot ritual. And I said, it's beating the purpose. The whole purpose is to just help you to come into your center, and then which helps you with what you need to do, right? So this is how we go. How's my body? Remember in the emotion section I was telling you, our body is giving us very important cues, right? Like for example, I'm still recouping from surgery. I know that if I don't move my leg, right, I'm going to be very tight, and at certain points I'm going to feel the tightness, so I have to keep moving, right? You see athletes, sometimes the tension is here, sometimes it's here, sometimes they're cramping in their leg, so you're getting cues, or your heartbeat is too high, some people are throwing up. So what is actually happening? How stressed am I, right? And what do I need to do about it is essential, right? So this was, I wanted to bring this in just so that we know that, see, stress is something we all face, every individual, right? But then stress related illness is something which, like it could be a depression, it could be a anxiety, which goes into the clinical. It really needs to be taken note of, and that's why I've said in the quote there that, just as a physical injury we go to a doctor, we really should be going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist when stress goes beyond a certain limit, right? Or as psychologists, we also need to know that, okay, this is something which needs to be referred probably to a psychiatrist. So please take note of that. Okay, now when we talk of stress, right, like I hear this from athletes or everyone, oh, I'm so stressed, right? So we all have stress, right? And I think it's also very essential to understand that there are two types of stress: eustress and distress, right? So what is eustress? Eustress is actually nothing but the positive stress. So I know I have to come in here today, I know I need to get up at a certain time, do certain preparations, and I come and deliver what is expected of me, right? So you need a little bit of it, right? And also, can I take something as a challenge? I know I have to deliver something in a particular way, I take it as a challenge, and I know that I can do this, I'm going to really try this, right? Distress is when it goes beyond a limit, when it starts eating you, when a person doesn't feel they have the required skills to actually live up to it. Or like Daisy said, emotion, going that this is not something that I am ready for, or dwelling on what could possibly wrong, and the problem is this much or the challenge is this much, and it gets magnified into a mountain. So that's also very, very essential to know the difference between eustress and distress. So can I actually use stress to help me? I hear a lot of players, a lot of cricketers especially going, I like challenges. I don't like if it's an easy match. The World Cup's happening now. Even we want to see a good fight. We don't want to just see a one-sided fight, right? Like a one-sided win, right? So what could be some of the factors which can help us in maybe, living up to the challenge, or, taking stress and making it into positive stress, using it as positive stress. So one of it could be controlling the controllables, right? There's only so much which is in your hand. You do that without focusing on all the other things. But you focus on what in me can stay steady, my emotions, how am I prepared, and also not externalizing the problem when I haven't delivered, right? So it's like I don't blame just the wind or the audience or XYZ. Go, yes, all these factors were there, but also most importantly, it impacted me, right? And the second, which I'm sure every faculty has been, insisting about and emphasizing, is performance goals, not just on the outcome. So your process is what is going to give you the outcome, right? And especially as we come closer to competition, who is it? I was recently telling someone this, and they said, oh, so shouldn't I push myself? Shouldn't I say go for gold? I said, no, you need to say all that. You need to prepare for all that when you're preparing. But as you're going in, don't put the additional pressure if you've not done it, that I'm going to go for gold, because then it just becomes unnecessary stress, right? So performance is at its peak when anxiety levels are at, what we say, the middle or at the optimum state. So, and that, like we've discussed in eyes off, like we've discussed in the flow state, it is different for each person, but it cannot be shooting up or shooting down, right? So that's something we need to really be aware of, that a little bit of angst, a little bit of stress is essential, but also knowing what's going to get me to my peak. So I'm going to read the quote that I had given. Okay, performance is at its best when anxiety levels are in the middle or at the optimum level. The tremendous pressure we place on our team to win obviously shoots up their anxiety level or of the team. So this is something to be very mindful of even when we work upon ourselves. So let's say you're a little anxious individual, so make sure you come on time. You have the time, you center yourself. You probably have a nice cup of chamomile tea. It's supposed to be very cooling. Get a sense of the environment. Than just coming in and rushing, then that's going to shoot up the anxiety, right? Someone who is an insistent thinker, what we tell them is having one trigger or one anchor to hold on. Okay, I'm going to beat my best, right? And all my thinking after the tournament. So it becomes very important, because if I've not done that before, if an athlete has not done it before, it becomes very difficult to really perform and handle it at that point of time. So that's really what I'm trying to say, and this impacts the zone. Your zone is very much dependent on how well are you centered and how are you holding yourself and giving yourself the best chance to perform, right? So I come to one of my favorite sections, which we'll also be having a discussion upon later, is on connections, right? And as you all know, I'm also training to be a analyst, a Jungian analyst, and something that we really say is that field, it's that space. And what Porges says here, it's one of my favorite quotes, is that safety is so much more than the absence of threat. Safety is the presence of connection. What does he mean here, right? So basically, we are not really facing the threat that our ancestors probably faced, right? You're not really fighting a wild animal every second day, unless you stay in the periphery of a forest and you venture in, right? But am I feeling safe with my team, right? Am I feeling connected to my team? That's going to determine, and that, what he says is, that helps us regulate ourselves, which in turn will help with our performance, right? So if you look at the diagram, right, it's about connection helps us to reflect and restore, right? Let's just think about it. You've had a really tough day. You probably had a difficult day. You come home and you either have a pet or your friend or your family. You're able to process it, or you could be an extremely introverted person and sit with a nice cup of tea with nature and just come into yourself. It really helps in restoration, right? So your stress hormone is coming down, which is nothing but cortisol. And then of course what we see next is survival. There are times when we either have to get into stress, fight or flight, right? And then finally what he says is conservation is when a person plays dead, right? We've all heard of the story, right? Like the person who plays dead to save himself against a wild animal. And that's the freeze response. So what Porges actually says is that what really impacts a human being, what keeps him happy and connected and alive and able to perform. Of course, the performance is what I've connected. But to be in their element is what a human needs, and I think what every other being also needs is really connections, right? Without that, right, then a person is constantly going to be in fight or flight, right, which is a lot of strain on the nervous system, and versus when it literally comes to the free state. So now I want to connect this. So what we understood with the previous slide, right, was stress and performance, nervous system regulation, right, with connections and bonding, right. Now what we're going to look at is from a very little bit of analytical psychology, depth psychology perspective, is play instinct. How do we connect? One of the best ways is through play, right, building bonds, right. So I want you all to ponder on this quote by Dr. Carl Jung. He asks, what did you do as a child that made the hours pass like minutes? Herein lies the key to your earthly pursuits. Right? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about it. And just go back. What did we all do? What did we all like doing as children? Of course, play. And it's right on the screen. But what does play instinct do? Think of small kids or children and pets, their curiosity, their imagination, creativity, right? And like even Einstein said, he got insight like suddenly, and just think about a time you're really mulling on something. It could be a personal challenge, or it could be something that you're trying to solve at work, and we think we're going on so much here in the cerebral, and maybe nothing's come, and then you just sparked it, and then suddenly you have an aha, right? And I think that really is what is play instinct. And there's this really beautiful quote on play instinct by Jung himself. So he says, the creation of something new is not accompanied by the intellect, but by the play instinct, acting from inner necessity. The creative mind plays with the object it loves, right? Think about it, right? And look at, this was of course, I was having an improv session with some of the young athletes, and they're very young, right? So you can't like sit and just say, okay, let's just meditate, let's just get into the center. So you have to play, you have to get that energy moving, and then there's ideas coming out, there's creativity, and then you made space and just put in what you need to, and they're really open at that time. And I think this is something I have learned immensely with elephants and animals is, play is a way of life, and play instinct is something every being, human being, animals are born with. Are we really utilizing it, right? So as important as our brain and the intellect is, it's also very important to make space for that play instinct, to make space to, like he says, I love that last line, which is like, the creative mind plays with the object it loves. Like even, just preparing this lecture, like let's say this section, it's I'm playing with what do I want to bring in here, what's different here, and that's how I am. Another individual may want to do it differently. So that's what it is, right? Like, how do you bring in creativity in everything you do? And why is this important? Because sport, right, like Bindra said, I've quoted it earlier as well, is like, it's about being prepared for the unexpected. How am I going to adapt myself? So if I'm always in a very tightly structured space, right, how are you going to be open to challenges? What are you going to do? So that's something we need to prepare them as well. So so in my sessions, I never give out direct answers. So and a lot of the times the athletes tell me, ma'am, you're playing, oh, you're like, oh, you're like, you're trying to get this out of me. But I kind of like work on the periphery. It doesn't even look like we're touching on the problem, but then you come and you tease it in, you come in so slowly that finally the reflection and the aha movement comes from them. That moment, aha, when it comes from an athlete, right, it's going to stay. And I think that's one of the roles that we as psychologists do, and I'm sure like different individuals and especially let's say the supporting staff do, because when I see coaches, right, like the very creative coaches, they're bringing in the same exercise but in different ways. They're giving them different challenges. And remember, flow, one of the essential ways to build flow was with play and creativity. So please remember this. And why is this? Why is this so important with this aspect? Because when I'm playing, when I'm playful, right, I'm connected to myself, I'm connected to the other, right? And what is the message my brain takes? We're fine, right? So we're not in a state of stress. We do not have to prepare for war, right? So cortisol is low. It brings us to our optimal state to perform. So one of the questions I like to ask is, what is it? What is your what if? Is your what if because you're thinking, okay, what if I really get it deep down unconscious, but I'm not prepared to handle it, which happens at different points of time, right? And I really want you to ask yourself, what do you want out of life and why do you want it? What have you told yourself about taking the risk necessary to create what you want? And I think these are very, very important reflections that one must dwell into, because this is going to determine how I view life, how I view my goals, how much stress I'm holding, and am I able to play with it, take it as a challenge, you know, convert it into Eustress and use it for my performance, right? Or I make a mountain out of it and that becomes distress, right? So to really recognize what is it that tell myself, how am I beginning my day? I know I've told you all this before. What's the story, the narrative which keeps running? Is this helping me and do I want to change this? Very, very essential, right? Because this is a model I work with and I thought I'll just, put it out for you all, is because I really feel it's the triangle. If you look at the quadrant, is really, first one is self, which is your reflection, your inner work. Second is really about how am I with the other, bonds and connection, and then the third is embodied deep action, which is our performance, right? So, and of course, I feel it's also the soul, because I really feel you can do one just very superficially, the other, when you've done it from soul, you really know how you've done it, right? So I call it the field of potential. And now we finally have an audio from an elite athlete who really talks about the need for connections, the essence, and why it's important to have these connections, which really helps us to tie up actually the entire course together. Yeah.
Hi, guys. So, I've been in competitive sports since the last 13 years. I started very young at the age of 10, and since then, I think in the last 13 years, after many nationals, after a lot of international competitions, and one Olympics later, I think I've seen a lot of highs and lows that the sport had to offer, and I'm still continuing to feel and learn so many new experiences and so many new things. But yeah, I just wanted to talk a bit about how the journey has been, because ultimately everybody looks at the result. Everybody talks at the result. Did you win the race? Did you lose the race? But nobody really speaks about the journey and what happens in all these years. The race only lasts a couple of seconds, but the amount of hard work and the amount of sacrifice that goes into getting those couple of seconds right is massive, and nobody really speaks about that. As a child, I mean, even till today, there is nothing else that brings me more joy and pleasure than my sport, and then the training, and then the routine. But just wanted to speak a bit about how it is and what happens behind the scenes. Everybody keeps saying, everybody tells us that, if you're an athlete and if you're aiming at bigger competitions, you have to follow a strict routine, you have to be focused all the time, you have to be motivated and determined to be better every single day. I believe all of that is true to a certain extent. Yes, there is a level of dedication required, there is a level of focus required to be the best from the rest. But, you know, everybody gets lost in that training, everybody is so engrossed in their training and that strict routine that you become so mechanical. Every day you're just getting up and running and trying to chase your goals. Even as athletes, nobody really focuses on the human side of an athlete. The end of the day, you're still a human being and you're allowed to feel emotions, whatever they may be, whatever kind of emotions they are. I remember as a child, I was always juggling between my swimming and my studies. And after I'm done racing, I'd get back to my books and I'd be writing exams, and I'd love that. I'd love the monotony, and I'd really, really enjoy it. But you know, when I was growing up, I never really, I was so lost in the monotony. I never really nurtured the human side. 13 years later, one Olympics later, after I got back from the Olympics, I was so happy because that's what I wanted all my life. And that was the biggest achievement of my career till date. And I was wondering, okay, now what? Who do I share this happiness with? Of course, I have friends, family, but I don't really have that many close friends, or my social life was dead because of my sport. But I believe that every athlete needs to find the human side, need to let their human side grow. Have an anchor outside of sport. um End of every week, say on a Saturday or a Sunday, you can maybe just go and hang out with your friends, keep in touch with them, and that feels good. That is an anchor to your human side. For me right now, I'm starting to discover some things that I like, some things that are of course outside the sport. Like, I love learning new languages, so I'm learning a new language, and that makes me feel good. I come back from my training and I look forward to learning a new language. I look forward to taking classes, and I feel like I'm nurturing and developing the girl in me, and that also makes me happy that I'm doing something else apart from my sport. And it also boosts my confidence as a girl that I am, as the growing girl that I am. And that definitely helps me with my training, with my everyday training, and it really makes me happy.
Right, so we come to the final reflections segment. I'd like to end with this, by really asking you all, how connected are you feeling, right? To yourself, to others. Are you active? Are you taking care of your physical needs fitness wise? Do you take notice? Is there awe in your life? Are you connected to nature? Begin a new skill, passion. It really helps keeping us going and reducing stress, right? And it challenges our brain, right? One of the keys that the founder of positive psychology, Seligman, says is that giving. How are you giving to life? you know Whatever way, in whatever way, right? And of course, there's this beautiful thing called Johari window, which really helps us to connect to bonds. By I ask like, I ask athletes to give two positive things that they like about each player. Okay. One is as a person and one is as a player, and then and the chits come to everyone, and then they open it and see, and just that joy you see, they're like, oh my god, this is what this person thinks. And of course, Johari window also looks at what is it that I know along with the other, what is it that I don't know but the other knows, what is it I know but the other doesn't know, and the final quadrant is the unknown. So just wanted to touch on that. So to really look at connections, and of course that's my favorite little girl. And I was just sitting there, and she coming and reaching out her trunk. And I'd like to leave you all with this. Really, to start dwelling on how connected are you feeling, because that's really going to help with your performance by reducing unwanted negative stress. So we'll have another small section in this unit with for the discussion. And thank you so much, and hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you. Welcome to our final segment. You see, we have something special for you all, and that I've been inspired by Priyanka. Hi, Priyanka.
Hello,
Welcome.
ma'am. Thank you so much.
So today we're going to be looking at connection, especially in response to stress, and we're going to connect it a little bit to Stephen Porges. We won't look at his theory as such, but just how he focuses on connection, and how that can impact a player at the personal, which impacts performance, is what we're going to look into. So I'm really excited, Priyanka.
Same here.
Yeah, so we're going to do a little demo. You can see we have these figurines here right in front of you, and then we'll build on this, and this is actually your real case scenario. Okay, so you can see these beautiful figurines here. So Priyanka, I'll explain the case to you, which we can build upon. Okay, so what you see in this end are a group of people who are sitting and chilling. It's a canteen situation, and the coach is in his own place, and this is our athlete. Okay, she's had a good session, and she's just come, and she sees that okay, people are in their own space, so she doesn't mind in the beginning, and then she's reading a book, she's chilling out. And then what starts happening, there are more people who come in, but they ignore her, and then they're all getting closer and closer here, beginning to ignore our athlete. Okay, you have one more here, and then what do you think happens, right? So this athlete is beginning to shrink, right? So she's her, what we call the inner child, is triggered and shrinking, because the group here is ignoring her. The coach, of course, is minding his own work, right? Minding his own business. So this is the first part. And then what happens? It becomes unbearable for her. She moves out of the situation, right? And what happens in the interim? Okay, so now I'm just going to shift this and just focus on our main character here. She's here very hurt with her inner figure. Thankfully, what she does, right, is she connects to a supportive figure who happens to be the psychologist in this case, right? Then what do you think happens to her? But we're not ignoring this little figure here, which is her inner child, right? Then this figure, right, this figure, our athlete who had shrunk, starts getting more powerful. Okay, and after she has worked on this, right, the next, there's a major event happening. Okay, what happens is she then starts integrating with people. So she's no longer an alone or inner figure here, right? So I wanted to bring this case study, right, to explain what happens to an individual, right? So to summarize, right, this figure shrunk, yeah, when she was hurt and moves away. But then we don't ignore this little one here, and after the supportive figure comes in, who's helped her work on herself, what then happens is she comes into her main power and is integrated and connected to people, right? So this is the demo we wanted to bring, and we can now build on this, right, Priyanka?
Sure, ma'am.
What did you feel?
It was very interesting. It was so powerful because I was able to feel her sadness.
Yeah, yeah,
I felt how lonely and sad she actually felt, especially,
Maybe we can
when.
keep them with us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was able to feel that she shrunk in her size and she became so small, and she felt probably that unloved.
Yeah.
Maybe she felt that nobody wants me, everybody is ignoring me. I was able to relate to her thought process.
Yeah. And this is sadly this is actually a real case scenario. But I guess we're all involved in such
Yeah.
spaces. So yeah, so I kind of think what we're doing here is also, we can say we shrunk, but when you actually see the shrinking here, and like how Priyanka is saying, right, like you could really touch and tap into it. So basically I probably did a decent job with explaining.
Yeah,
right?
no, you did a good job.
So and I think that's mirroring, right? And that's the connection that you're feeling,
Yeah.
right? Because it's and that's what I did as the psychologist with her, right? So that's where the connection comes in, right? What Porges, Stephen Porges really says. I quoted this even in my chunk on stress, and I want to bring it again. He says, safety is not just the absence of threat, but the presence of connection.
Yeah.
And I think what we're trying to bring out through this was, she felt so alone. Our athlete felt so alone
Yeah.
amidst a group of people, and this can happen a lot of times, in sport, in life, to us, to everyone. And she went away, but I think the good thing was she connected to
Yeah.
the psychologist.
Absolutely. I think sometimes nobody there. What stood out for me was none of them actually told her anything. They didn't say that you're not good enough. We don't want to
Yes.
connect with you, but she felt that way.
Yeah.
And somewhere we really have to help her remember that she is also loved. She's worthy of being
Yeah.
loved and respected, and she's worthy of making connections.
Yes, exactly. And the group here, right, could have also thought that she wants her space.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And but what was growing in her head was, I'm being ignored.
Yeah.
Or for whatever reason this has happened, and it was really tough for her. But the
Yeah.
point was, I think this connection here, and even in the session, Priyanka, we also held this little one here, because it's very essential to realize, we all of us have some inner trauma, inner work that needs to be done, and this embedding, this one cannot be ignored. And once she came into herself, right, like to tell and convince your little one inside you to go, we're fine,
Yeah.
we're in a good state, and only then did she come into her power. And then it was a beautiful, because
then she made that decision to go and take the initiative to mingle with other people.
Exactly.
Rather than ignoring.
Yeah. That day, of course, she was not in the right space.
Yeah.
But the point was, it was a major tournament after that. And then, once we worked, she said, yes, I'm going to go have a good time. And she had a good time. And, it was so heartening. It was so heartening.
Yeah, absolutely. What I see you have done with her is the fact that helped her feel safe within, so that she can really go out there and connect with other people.
Yeah. Safe. And then also, something is to start using an anchor. Like I was like, you could use a music. You could like probably, go connect to nature, like we always say. And once we could do that work,
Yeah.
having that connection again and rebuilding, her integrity into the team.
Yeah.
I think that's just so important. Priyanka, I did speak about Porges in this section, but I kind of felt like, just getting into an example would be really nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you feel about Porges? I know you like him as well very much.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when we're talking about performance, we're not just thinking about high performance without safety.
Yeah.
So I think what he speaks about connection, co-regulation, and the self
Belonging, which comes in.
Everything is so important for the performance to take place. An athlete really has to feel connected and safe within self, and also for them to go out there and connect with other people. The environment has to create a safe space for this person to, you know,
Right.
yeah, for the high performance to happen.
Precisely.
You know, the safety is so important, and I think that is one thing that we've mentioned from
Throughout. Yes.
throughout the
Yes.
course, and
Yes. Yeah.
everything, be it with injury, be it retirement, be it with communication, you know, team building, every single thing has the
Yes.
same theme, that is connection, belonging, you know, regulation. And here, that is what I saw happening,
Yeah.
right? There was
Yeah.
co-regulation which happened,
Exactly.
between the psychologist and the athlete,
Yeah.
which Porges actually speaks about. And somewhere I think for sports, that connection and safety is important for the performance to actually take place.
Yeah, I think you really touched on such a vital aspect, and for everyone taking the course and listening, sport and performance, people think, and especially with psychology, they think of, okay, what do you do? Sometimes I'm like, how do you really answer, like, this question in like the best way possible?
Yeah.
Because as much as it is about sport and performance, what we're really looking at is building a team,
Yeah.
building that environment, like Priyanka was saying, which can groom and bring out the best in athletes.
Yeah.
Right? And that is why our team building exercises, our vulnerability, be it your, how do you even strengthen your resilience, how do you bring out, everything's going to depend on, can we all come together? And especially when we're looking at team, but even when you look at like a group, like an individual game as well, there's still your whole team. You cannot be just people just coming in, but like we're not connected. It's like the difference between a home and a house.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I remember when I was traveling with the one of the teams for the very first time. I didn't feel any sense of disconnect at all.
Right.
They took care of me so well. They
Yeah.
made sure that I feel safe, and that helps in doing
Exactly.
our job better.
Yes, yes.
So,
Oh, definitely.
and I'm sure you felt the
Yeah.
same, right?
I was remembering, especially since I worked with a lot of men's teams.
Yeah.
I think one of my challenges is not when you're taking the sessions, but I think the social situations
Yeah.
where it's just like this entire bunch of very well disciplined but still men.
Yeah.
And but the thing was, they would make me feel included, like they would
Yeah.
sometimes make me like the judge of like event, just so that
You
I'm
belong,
included. Yeah, I
yeah.
belong. And
Yeah.
and that makes a lot of difference. It's like, also I think to add, I normally state that, look, I'm introverted, I take some time, and that was held so well. I felt safe to
Yeah.
tell my whoever it was, my head of ops,
Yeah.
and they took care of that.
Yeah.
It was not mocked, it was not like, oh my god, you're the psychologist, but I kind of feel like that inclusivity which we're talking of, right, like makes a world of difference. Because
Absolutely.
then instead of this person shrinking, when someone notices, okay, they actually help and empower.
Yeah.
So that's where co-regulation, the mirroring happens. And I think that's what we really wanted to touch on and mirror that. How, let's say if like I struggled a little, or when one of these fell down, Priyanka came in and put it up, right? So I don't have to worry about it, oh my god, like, am I making a mistake? Which is very honestly what it is. But knowing that she's also someone I know, or someone I trust, and we've built that trust.
Yeah.
And this is something I am venturing for the first time, very much
Yeah.
inspired by her. And to know that someone's got your back, right, I think makes a world of difference
Yeah.
in whatever you're doing. So what we really wanted to bring out was how connections are so
Yeah.
important.
Like for me, I knew that you want to do it, so I was like, I held the space.
Yes.
But then I was like, okay, this is also falling. So
Yeah.
for the recording, let it look.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so-
and I think that's the thing, the subtleness with which you held it is
Yeah.
also very important. No, not going, okay, fine, what, like, fine, if there's a mistake, it's okay. But
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, let me just be
Yeah.
a little supportive, and I think that really helps. So I think there was a play within the play here in
Yeah.
itself. So thank you for that. That was really nice.
Yeah.
And I think what he also says, connections, which I feel is to bring in a play attitude, playful instinct. And I think that's what it is. It's like,
Yeah.
um, a little bit of structure, yes, but also a little bit of play and creativity, I think
Yeah,
makes
and
a
the
world of difference.
realness. Right?
Yeah.
That is the most important thing. The realness with which things can actually flow and happen
Right.
rather than, staging everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, you need to know what you're doing. You
Yeah,
can't but the
absolutely.
point is also sometimes to also trust, no, what's in
Yeah.
the field and what's
Yeah,
opening in the
yeah,
space.
yeah.
Just like sport, right, Priyanka? And life, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. This was really nice. I think we demonstrated what Poges is and what Poges, recommends and insists, and I think it's such a beautiful theory, right? Like which seems so easy, but I think like even as we went through this, I was feeling her tension and stuff, but like I think as it's settled, and then as we started the discussion, I'm feeling very held and connected as well.
Yeah.
So this was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Is there anything you'd like to add? And I'd really like to thank Priyanka.